I'm here with three colleagues of mine that I'm going to quickly introduce. To my left, well, not sure what side is here for you, but I have Enrique Bermejo. Enrico holds a PhD in computer science from the University of Granada, and he's currently a senior AI researcher and head of product at Panacea. Then we have Maria Alejandra Guativonce. Alejandra is a doctoral student in biomedicine with a background in physical and forensic anthropology, and her research focuses on facial and craniofacial identification methods. And finally, we have Andrea Valsecchi. Andrea earned his PhD in computer engineering from the University of Oviedo and has over 16 years of research experience. And he's also a senior researcher here at Panacea. Well, thank you guys for being with us here today. The plan for the event is that we're going to walk you through some of our research related to facial comparison and show you a product we have been working on for the last year or so.
Well, as Sebastian said, today we would like to show our promising research related to facial comparison and see how AI is helping us with these advances. As you know, in our day-to-day, we see how these new technologies, and especially AI, are transforming the way we observe things and make decisions. And we think that the same thing is happening in forensic facial comparison. So the video surveillance is now everywhere with more integrated technologies. They also integrate facial recognition, but we think that the number of cases will keep growing thanks to this facial recognition, because they allow us to find people that more candidates than we originally had. So this is one part, but however, we think the essential techniques remain subjective and sometimes inconsistent. So there is a clear gap between the methodology and the new tools that AI offers. So our research is focused in addressing this gap in three ways. First, making the process more objective and efficient by providing an objective quality analysis using AI. Then we can see how we can complement the methodology using a novel 3D to 2D automatic superimposition of images. And finally, we can try to reduce the amount of work to be done by using predictive photoanthropometry to filter candidates. So for our research, we have been collecting a multimodal dataset with 3D images and videos, trying to reproduce complex and varied scenarios that we see in surveillance images. And with this dataset, we are evaluating our research, and we are presenting this today based on preliminary analysis on this data. The first problem that we have in mind is trying to address the problem of image quality in facial comparison. And as you may know, the current forensic process requires you to evaluate if an evidence is of sufficient quality for a later assessment. So this process at this moment is mostly subjective, but we know that the result of the identification is heavily impacted by the quality of this image. In a related field of biometrics, a novel ISO standard has been proposed recently, along with a referent implementation called open source face image quality. However, the use case of this standard is not a forensic context per se. It's based on enrollment scenarios and entry exit systems, and the process is focused on simpler scenarios where the faces are large in the images and more or less high quality. The interesting part of this proposal is that we not only analyze a single quality score, as this is not recommended in a forensic scenario, but a series of attributes from the camera and from the environment. From the camera, we can have information about the illumination, the overexposure and the underexposures, the sharpness, and something related to this camera quality, the scenario quality. But also we can gain information about the subject, if they have their eyes open, their mouth closed, head pose, and we can also see measured in distances between the eyes and related to coverings or occlusion in the images. And this is an example where we can see the changes between two kinds of images with different illumination properties and their impact in the scoring systems. For example, we see highlighted here the underexposure of the sharpness of the images. Those have a huge impact in the final quality score. We see a difference between an 87 of this unified quality score and the lower from the image in the right. But we also see how these metrics have a correlating between the high number of the quality measurements on the left, but that we almost see 100% scoring system in most of the subject-related metrics. But we see the impact, for example, in the head size. Right? This is an important element that we will going to use for example later. We have been working in adapting this previous implementation of OFIC. So we are evaluating how this internal pipeline of artificial intelligence algorithms work. And here we can see an example of the pipeline of the different algorithms that they use internally. So we detect the face, landmarks, we obtain information about the masking of different parts of the face. And the last couple of images are what is called a semantic segmentation, where we can see highlighted different parts of the face. And with these algorithms, we can focus on the most relevant elements that are currently analyzed in a forensic context. So, for example, we will show later a demonstration, but we are developing an application that helps with the process of analyzing the suitability of an image based on the most relevant metrics. Here we have a collection of these scores related to the resolution, the presence of compression artifacts, sharpness, illumination, and the most important thing that we think is crucial when analyzing the images is the head size. In the Spanish police, for example, one of the relevant things that they analyze is measuring in pixels the head size. In this case, we can differentiate between a frontal pose of the subject in the image. So we measure the head size in pixels between the Sigion and the left and the right Sigions. And when we deal with profile images, we measure this measure is related to the distance between the Sigion and the nation. So we measure if a minimum of this measurement is present in the image. This will help us with analyzing the validity, the suitability of this image. We also integrate an overall metric that tells us some information about the visibility of facial features or the presence of occluding elements in the image. And with this information, we can support the process of analyzing if these images are of quality, enough quality to be considered to the later assessment. And here we can see the flexibility of the proposed application, where we can see different subjects or individuals in an image, and we can obtain different analysis, for example, showing here the different results for the changes in illumination or the visibility of the facial features, like this last one. And we would like to now present how we integrate this in the current workflow. So Alejandro is taking over, showing you as a demo of the software.
Okay, perfect. So I will now be showing you how the software from CBN Labs for forensic facial comparison works. Um, Basically, the first thing that we must do is upload the new evidence. First, we are going to be uploading the video. So we select one of the videos that we want to use for the comparison. So I will be using this one. And in this section, we also have different tools that are very helpful. So for example, I can just select a part of the video where the face is visible. So for example, here, and I can just do a screenshot of that specific frame. But if I have more information on the face and I want to take more screenshots, I can just extract those frames. So I will click on extract, and then I can see that I have a lot of more images from that individual. And the next part would be doing the selection of the image so the software can perform the automatic quality assessment of that image. So for example, I will be choosing this one. And then it gives me an information regarding what Enrique has already explained. So, for example, resolution, sharpness, illumination, and also the head size regarding left Sigeon to right Sigeon, etc. And what it does is gives a result in valid or invalid. So in this case, this image has sufficient quality and it's suitable enough to be classified as valid for our research and our comparison. So I can just select that image. But for example, if I have an image where the face is not visible enough, it would just give it an invalid result. So the next part would be I can select more than one image, of course.
It's
Yes.
important to remark that two things. At this moment, we are extracting images from the videos without losing quality, and also we leave the final decision of the suitability of the image to the analyst, so they can override the decision or the recommendation of the algorithms in here. So you are able to change elements in this field.
Thank you, Enrique. Yes, you can actually change, for example, if you don't agree with one of these results, you can just change it as limited or not suitable, or even you can add this an invalid value. And then we can go to the comparison part of the software. So we see that we have the image that we selected previously. And now we can do a series of, let's say, alterations to that image. We do not lose any kind of quality of the photo or other information that we already have. This is just changes that can be reversible as well. So for example, we can do an automatic crop, which is basically selecting a specific part of the image which centers the face, so we can work with it much smoother. And then we can also do zoom in or zoom out. We can also rotate said image, or for example, change the brightness and contrast of that image. And all of these changes, of course, are saved within the software, and then you can access to that information later on. And you can also do flips, etc. And then the next part would be adding the reference image, which is the one that you would be using for comparison. And then the algorithm again does that image quality assessment, and it deemed this image as valid as well. And also I can change this result if the expert does not agree with that. And we selected, and we also have the same kind of tools. Now we can do, for example, a manual crop of set image, and also change and vary the brightness, the contrast, etc. Now that we have both images, we can see that on the right has appeared a panel, which is the morphological feature list. This list is based on the same one that proposes FISWIC. It's found on their website, and also it's the same one that a lot of different institutions use. For example, here in Spain, this is what the police uses for facial comparison. So for example, we can either search for a specific feature. So for example, if I wanted to pay more attention to the mouth, specifically the lip, I can see that I have this panel that says mouth, and then I have the upper lip, but then this also has like subcategories. So if I select that, I can see that I can give information to the shape of the mouth, so of the upper lip of the mouth. So for example, I can assess that specific subcharacteristic. So if the shape is the same or similar, I can take a decision upon that specific feature. So in this case, I would say it's similar. And I can also leave specific comments to that. And for example, if I wanted to assess the whole upper lip, I can just select it and say it's similar, or even the whole mouth as a full set. Also, I can give it a similar degree. And I can just have all the different lists in here. So for example, if I want to evaluate the hair, and then I would just go with the whole thing and say it's also similar. Or if I have facial hair, so the facial hair is also very evident. So I can also select that and give information. So for example, beard and mustache. And this will go to my notes, and then I say similar, and you can see that a little note panel appears later. So all of this information, I can start evaluating the different features of the face, and then also if there's something that I don't think is visible, so I can give the degree of undeterminable, for example. Or if something wouldn't be similar, I would just give it a dissimilarity decision. And then we can just fill out as many as we need, or as many as that specific institution or specific individual police work has. And then at the end, I can just take a decision upon this examination and give it a confidence level. So also this confidence level varies according to specific institutions or individual expert work. And it just gives me, let's say, a degree of support to my decision of them being the same individual or not. So in this case, I would say it's the same individual, but there are some instances that cannot allow me to do a very high degree of support, which would be number 3, because, for example, they have glasses, and the glasses also obscure specific parts of the face, especially like the root of the nose, and some things in the eyes cannot be assessed correctly. So I would probably give it a degree of support or confidence level or 2 or 1. And at the end, I can just go to the next part, which would be generating a report. So in this section, we can see the confidence level to the decision that we made. And also we have the questioned image and the reference one. And the different alterations that we did to that image can be accessed here. So for example, I changed the brightness and contrast of the questioned image, so I can see what those changes were. And also what was the quality assessment of said image. And I can add other important information like the name of the report, the case code, the expert, and also there's a blank space to add more details or specific things that need to be mentioned. And if I scroll down, I can find the morphological characteristics list that I evaluated. So I have all the different characteristics and the subcategories from that, and also the notes, if I left any, and the evaluation that I gave to that specific characteristic. And it saved a lot of dissimilarity, but then I also selected a lot of similar ones. And then at the end, I can just export said report, and it gives me a Word document that can be edited and changed and then added to the standard report template that any different institution uses and presents. And this is how the software works. It's very simple and very quick to use.
Just that mention that this last panel was intended to have a summary where we can see after a first glance of some incongruences that we may have in the list of the morphological characteristics, but also provide us with a global vision of this specific analysis between a one-on-one comparison, providing us with information about the traceability of each change or modification that we integrated in this process. So this is reproducible between different analysts, and we provided this also information about the quality to support the whole range of generating the reports with objective and traceable information. So that's just the only thing that I wanted to.
The next part is going to be about our current research and basically the future of what we have in mind with this product.
So I will continue with this part of the presentation of the things that are our ongoing projects. So the first of them would be the superimposition. So briefly, superimposition is a technique that consists on overlaying a question facial image on top of a reference facial image. Traditionally, this is done with 2D photographs, but this technique is discouraged by international working groups like FISWIC or MC because it has quite some methodological flaws, such as the need for both images to have the same conditions, such as the pose, the same expression, etc. And this is quite complicated when working with 2D images. However, what we propose is using a 3D, 2D automatic superimposition approach because a lot of different police forces around the world have started using 3D facial scans as part of their usual mugshot capturing process. And so this new approach would open up the possibility for application and standardization of this technique, because up until now, is not only discouraged, but sometimes might be accepted, but only if it's supported with with other technique, which is the morphological comparison that we just saw on the software. So we saw that the superimposition involves placing one object on top of another one. In this case, in the 3D 2D approach, would be a 3D model of the face overlaid over a 2D facial image. And the goal is to align the anatomical features of both objects as precisely as possible and to recreate the same pose in both images. To match the 3D face with the photo, we need to perform certain things such as moving, rotating, and scaling the 3D model so that it looks like it's in the same pose as the person in the reference photo. This is not the only thing that's important. There are other factors like the subject to camera distance, which is how far or how close is the person from the lens of the camera. And also the perspective distortion, because these concepts can alter the way that the face is presented on an image. So, for example, on this image, we can see that the person is standing very, very close to the lens of the camera. So this changes the way that we perceive the face. It's more distorted. And for example, the ears are not visible. The nose is too wide, the mouth as well. And it's very complicated to match this specific pose and this subject to camera distance information. However, on the other image, we can see that the person is standing farther back from the camera. And so the shape of the face makes more anatomical sense, and the ears are visible, the nose is a standard size, the mouth as well, etc. So the automatic 3D 2D superimposition approach basically integrates all of these elements into the process of superimposing both objects, and it reduces the margin of error in forensic facial comparisons. So here we present a system that performs the automatic superimposition by overlaying the 3D facial model over the 2D facial image using anatomical landmarks as reference points. And this also matches the perspective, and it recreates the camera parameters and also the head pose of the reference image. And since this is performed automatically, the need for the manual adjustments can be reduced, and it makes the process more efficient and consistent, especially, for example, when we're working with large data sets or with time-sensitive forensic cases. So in the example here, we can see that this is the 3D model of the face, and the little green dots, I don't know if it's visible, those are the facial landmarks that the algorithm uses to guide that superimposition. So for example, in a frontal image is easier, but in an oblique one it would be more complicated. But with this approach, it's performed automatically. And this saves a lot of time of moving, rotating, and scaling the 3D model. So we also present a study that was performed on 52 facial landmarks that were manually annotated on a set of 25 individuals. It was for facial expressions. And we were able to evaluate the average displacement vectors that gives us information on the direction and magnitude of movement of parts of the face. And this is visible on the arrows on the photo here. And these changes are visualized on a neutral face because it's easier to understand how the face and the different parts of the face move according to different expressions. So for example, we can see that the arrows are more visible on the lower half of the face, which is the one that usually changes the most with expressions. So each of the arrows has a different color, and they represent 5 different emotions. In this case, we had anger, happiness, a smile, surprise, and sadness. But we can see that the 2 emotions that have more representative changes were smile and surprise. Because, for example, when people are surprised, we usually tend to open our mouth quite wide. And so the mouth changes, and also the lower part of the face, the chin and the jaw, it drops down a little bit. And also when people smile, the corners of the mouth lift up, as well as a lot of tissue from the cheeks. So this is very visual and visible representation of those changes, which are the green arrow and the purple one. And so in conclusion, by incorporating all of this 3D information as well as the expressions, we introduce more flexibility in the comparison process and allows us to more accurately reproduce the conditions under which the question image was taken. And also we can make sure that the comparison is more reliable and accurate. And all of this can open up the door to developing specific methods and standards for the application and analysis of the superimposed images.
So now I'm going to talk about a technique called photo anthropometry. For those of you who don't know it, this is the idea of taking measurements regarding a human face on a picture, right? So what this could look like, what we are looking at in this image, that I want to quantify, for instance, that a face is especially long or wide, and I simply take a measurement on a picture, right? So this kind of technique is currently not so much used in facial forensics examination, because it's quite unreliable due to the fact that those kind of measurements, when taken on a picture, can vary a lot depending on the pose of the subject. So even if we are taking a picture of the same person, depending on how this picture is taken, for instance, depending on the lens that we are using or the pose of the subject, those measurements are not reliably giving us always the same results, right? So that's what I wrote here is that the classical version of anthropometry is usually not reliable. Well, this is an example of the same phenomenon and taking a picture of the same person with more or less the same frontal pose, but we can see that there is a big difference between those two pictures, and the difference lies into the distance to the subject, and we can see a lot of perspective distortion in the photo on the right. So this will tell us that unless we are able to reproduce exactly the photographic condition, we cannot rely on measurement taken on the photo, right? But this is if we want to compare two photographs between each other. Recently, we have been studying an alternative approach to this, which is to use AI to model the relationship between those measurements that are taken on a picture and those that are the actual measurement on the human face. So in a way, they are in 3D, right? Well, those are called dimension or proportionality indices because we both consider measurements that are usually taken using landmarks as a reference, like in the example that we can see on the right. And we are also considering ratios between those two, right? So for instance, if I want to quantify the fact that a face is especially elongated, I can consider the ratio between the width and the height. That can be defined based on anatomical network. Right. Once you consider this, the intuition behind this technique is that they give you an estimate of the 3D values of these indices, right? For instance, if a face is especially long in a picture, it's quite likely that it's going to be elongated as well in 3D. This is the idea. So if you collect all these measurements taken on a picture, and you can somehow express the kind of pose that has been used for this picture, then you can make some inference on the values of these DPIs, proportionality indices, in 3D. So that's what we did. We considered this idea where you start from a picture, then you move to measuring 2D indexes, so these indexes on a picture, and then through machine learning, a form of AI, we turn this information into an estimate of the 3D values. Well, with this, what can we do? Our objectives was not to completely characterize a human face, but to filter candidates. So we created an experimental study where we had over 100 individuals, and we collected 10,000 photographs of these, and we mark landmarks, and from this landmark we measure 25 different measurement and ratios of these. And using our system, we were able to filter negative candidates. So being able to tell this picture do not belong to this person in over 60% of the cases. And we didn't make any mistake on positive candidates. So we never exclude the correct candidate. This is a completely automatic system, obviously, right? So what is the value of this? Well, it allows us to compare a photograph against a big database of picture in a completely automatic way. So these save time and resources. And this can be, it's quick. So it can be done for a very large candidate pools. And you can quickly rule out all the negative candidates. Well, in this case, like 60% of the negative candidates can be easily ruled out. On top of this, this also provides you a rationale for the exclusion, right? Because you are saying, okay, this system detected that this index is not in expected range for this person, so we can exclude them. So it's not like having a report from an expert or something like a black box that says simply, okay, according to the model, this is not okay. So these provide a certain advantage in terms of transparency and when you need to report this information to a judge.
I think it's like just reading the questions. I think it's important to note that like this last part is like ongoing research. This is not yet part of the product. Okay, I'm going to read some of the questions and feel free to add more to the chat. The first question we have here, is it possible to annotate the pictures with arrows?
The answer to this question is we are working on this. We are integrating more tools. So the original idea of this application is to integrate the whole workflow of the current process into one simple tool instead of you having multiple tools, for example, like Photoshop with all the wide range of things that Photoshop integrates. We try to replicate the most relevant features that this kind of software have in our system. So we are currently adding more features to this range of tools, and we expect to have this on future version of the software. But this is definitely one of the things that we are working currently on.
You don't want to say when, right?
No. Development is not my thing.
Okay, but I know it's like a feature a lot of people have already asked for, so I'm sure it's going to happen very soon. Okay, another question we have is, have you validated the 2D, 3D superimposition approach? What is the margin of error for different types of images?
Okay, we have been developing this system. As Sebastian said, we are currently working with the research part, and we have the margin of errors of the superimposition. I don't know if Andrea has this information about the specific margin of error, but because we don't have this at the moment, but we are validating this at the moment. The thing is, Alejandra is working, currently leading a methodological study on what to do with the superimposition images, because we see the same thing, that this is superimposing images and analyzing the superimposed image can lead to bias. So we are working on a methodological analysis to see, for example, if what's the most useful thing to do with the results of the superimposition. So at this first glance, we think that maybe using the 3D model that has a rich value of information about the facial features, we can use this model to provide more flexibility when looking at candidates in your databases. So if you have the 3D model, you are able to reproduce any kind of condition that you are presented with the question evidence, replicate the pose and the distance of the camera, the influence of the camera parameters in this 3D model, and compare them, extract the projection of the 3D model, so you can compare two images like you are doing at this moment. So we think that this could be the most relevant thing that this automatic superimposition can provide us at this moment, instead of measuring these errors inside the images. And in parallel, we are also working on providing a system to quantify the likelihood ratio based on the error of this superimposition. So this is ongoing work. We are currently validating with the database I mentioned, And so, but we cannot present results at
I'm sure we're going to have another online event to present those results in the future. Okay, thank you, Enrique. We have another question. Are facial landmarks alone sufficient for identifying a person from a photograph? And how important are the side view facial landmarks?
The thing is that according to the international working groups like FISWIC or MC, which are the ones that are in charge of standardizing the technique of facial comparison, they the use of landmarks alone for identification is not enough, because if you only place landmarks, of course, it doesn't give you much information. They are encouraged to use as a guide for the use of the technique. So, for example, you might have them for guiding the superimposition in this case, which is still a discouraged technique, but it can be used alongside with the morphological description technique. So it's useful to have them, but they're not really accepted as a sole identifying process.
Okay, thank you, Alejandra. I'm surprised that we have no questions about image quality. I was expecting a lot of questions about that.
Due to comparison with mouth closed, have you made comparisons with teeth? Because they can give you a lot of information, color, position of it.
It's okay. Well, we have usually a lot of different kinds of images, and actually it is true that a lot of comparisons, if we have smiling photographs, would be giving a lot more information, but it just depends on the case that you're working on. And actually we also have a research line that is dental comparison, that's completely different, but it also can be applied, some of that, to the superimposition process, for example. But yes, it could be useful. It just depends on the case that you're working with.
Okay, also feel free to reach out to us if you have more specific questions that are maybe outside the scope of this event. We have another question. What is the minimum image quality for the software to work? Maybe, Enrique, it would be helpful if you could pull up the screen again. So, and maybe zoom in a little bit, because I think it was quite small, to see how the software is evaluating an image.
But if you can see here, we have the text you can read on the slide. We don't have a minimum requirement for the image quality, but instead, let me present you the application because maybe this could solve some of the issues.
Yeah. The thing is, this is very, very small.
Yeah. Okay. In this image, you can see the size of the image, the size in pixels. And you see that the resolution of the image gives us a certain score. We are able to measure this and calibrate this on megapixels. So what we are seeing related to this metric specifically is we took the CCTV quality, the old CCTV quality, as a reference, as a limit for the 50. The scoring system is between 0 and 100. So the half part of this metric is measuring the baseline of the scoring system. So we use the CCTV quality as reference for that. But we don't have a specific minimum image requirement. This will give us a score based on what you consider what is the minimum quality of the resolution. So each one of these components is going to be measured between suitable, limited, or not suitable. But the good thing is that we have also integrated the control of the user to decide which for each metric, which range between these scores will give you the result of the scoring system. So you have control over the decision if an image is suitable, not suitable, or limited. So you can change for each one of these metrics the range where you decide which is valid or not. I hope this answers the question.
Okay, thank you, Enrique. We have another question. first statement, you do the comparison with the mouse closed. Have you made comparisons with teeth? Because they give a lot of information, like color, position, filling size. This is exactly what Alejandra was referring to earlier. But if you want to expand a little bit on that, Alejandra?
I mean, I really don't think there's much to expand. I mean, it is useful to use teeth on these kind of images, because if you have a very good quality image of those teeth, the comparison can be made, and it can actually be very helpful with specific details, such as if the person has any work done on the teeth or things like that. So yeah, it could be done with that. It just depends on the kind of case that you're working with.
Also, if you're more interested in that, I think we have an entire presentation on that subject. We're happy to share it if you leave us your email. Okay, and another question. How can the knowledge from your seminar be applied to the identification of a person when the reference image is a standard frontal photograph, while the comparative image is taken at an angle, such as a 45-degree view or of a deceased individual?
I can also answer that. It's really a very complicated question. However, I would say that it's not really advisable to perform comparison with deceased individuals. It is like a very complicated matter, because a lot of changes can be perceived on the face even hours before after death. So it is a very discouraged technique to do facial comparison with deceased individuals. So I really would say to not try it. There's a lot of things that could be researched upon that subject, but at the moment, there's nothing that can be helpful in this kind of cases for an accurate identification. So I am sorry about that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it seems we have reached the end of the questions here in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for, I've seen like a lot of people have completed the survey, so thank you so much for that. If you want to try the software, we'll be in touch. Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And well, also thank you to Andrea, Alejandra, and Enrique for speaking here today. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, morning, wherever you are. Bye-bye.